Hi, I'm Olivia, and this is my recommendations channel, and Mila's over here. She'll be joining us in a second. I just want to warn you guys that Mila may lose her absolute mind while we're filming. Alex has moved back home for the time being with the ride or die, and Mila, not a fan of Alex. So if Alex needs to use my bathroom, because we're all sharing my en-suite bathroom, she's going to lose her ever-loving mind. Just, it is what it is. That's what I've been saying a lot of today. But we'll adjust. I don't know what she finds so interesting on my arm. I hope she's not softening me up to take a big bite. No, she's a good girl. Even if she does, lose her mind when it's Alex. So, this is, such as it is, the new set. You'll notice I was using the black chair before. This is the blue chair. This is the original chair, the original saucer chair. It is my, I actually bought this saucer chair before COVID, and this is the saucer chair that saved my mind when I had COVID, because I was just like, I could sit on my bed, or I could sit on my chair, or I could sit in my bed, or I could sit in my chair, because my dad at the time was, 90 years old, and I wanted to protect him from COVID. He eventually did get COVID, but not from me. So the book we're going to do today is called The Dissonance. It's by Shaun, Hamill, and it's about magic-ish, sort of. I'm thinking maybe this is not the best place to put my chair, just because I have a 4-poster bed, and I've got a ring light here, which is just fine, but the light from the ceiling is actually, I don't know if you can see the shadow from it. You probably can. Anyway, I'll worry about that later. Right now, book. So I wrote this script back in July, and so I don't know, it's going to be surprised. We'll all be surprised together. And then Alex and said no pseudonym yet, friend, moved in, and I was filming in Alex's old bedroom, and my color scheme was green and red and black. And now I'm in here, and my walls are orange, as you'll see if you watch my you can kind of see it through the screen here, and also in the makeup video that I just shot. You can clearly see it because I'm standing in this, is not actually that tall. So it's at its highest height, but it's not that tall. So yeah, my bedroom's orange, and so we're doing orange and cyan. This screen is mostly white, but it kind of gets cyanier towards the end. Once I get this shortened so that I can actually put it on the bar, then I'll kind of squeeze the ends in a little bit more so you can see more of the cyan. But anyhow, new set, same dog, new script. So in the book, The Dissonance, 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 not Dissonance, are people who are able to sense the conflict between what should be and what is. They derive magic from the brokenness of the world, basically. And the dissonance is about a coven of 4 dissonants that met while in high school. The book goes back and forth between 2019 and the late 1990s. We open in 2019 with Hal, one member of their coven, leaving an AA meeting. He's meeting with his lawyer the next day about criminal charges that are being levied against him. His attorney says the best he can do for Hal is a plea deal for 10 years with parole after 5. Then we move to Athena, who runs a coffee shop / magic bookstore. She teaches courses in things like sex magic, but the real moneymaker is a side business and what we are told are dissonant texts. We'll find out more about those later. We're then introduced to a new character, not a member of their coven, Owen, a young gay man who's invited to a magic ritual in a cemetery outside of town that's being run by Owen's crush. And then we meet Erin, who works in a coffee shop. After she gets off work, we meet her companion, Philip. As we meet all these people, everything goes to hell. Hal and Athena experience magical earthquakes that no non-dissonants seem to notice. The ritual that Owen is participating in ends in the deaths of all the kids except Owen. Cole, the crush, ends up possessed by an entity that threatens to kill him if he won't drive the Cole thing, that's what we refer to him for most of the rest of this book, to some other destination. And finally, Erin and Philip are attacked by pigeons, like a Hitchcock level event. And where are Owen and the Cole thing going? The same place where Hal, Athena, and Aaron are headed, invited for a memorial service, Clegg, Texas. Then we go back to 1996, where we see Hal, Athena, Aaron, and their friend Peter ending their last day of junior high. They've traditionally held sleepovers at Peter's house, where he lives with his grandfather. The sleepover is also a birthday party for Hal. Hal's mom is kind of a mess, and she didn't remember to acknowledge Hal's birthday. After the cake party, part of the party, in the movie marathon part, Athena finds a book on the floor of the hallway outside the professor's office. She gets distracted from the movie part by reading the book. Actually, during the movie marathon part. She eventually passes the book around, which wasn't written in English, and yet she, Aaron, and Peter can almost read it. Hal cannot read it. Athena takes Aaron, Hal, and Peter outside. Now, the four of them know they should not leave the house. The house borders on some woods where I use the word spooky. I don't know if that's exactly right. But, yeah, things have happened. In fact, a little boy, Charlie, has recently disappeared into those woods. Nevertheless, Athena has Hal lie down, and she draws some symbols around him. Hal soon begins to levitate. Unfortunately, Athena did not find the instructions on how to bring him back down. So, as Hal drifts slowly upwards with no end in sight, Athena begins to look for a solution. And then a creature bursts from the forest, grabs her, and pulls her back into the forest. Hal continues to drift upwards, gradually getting colder. He decides that freezing to death in the upper atmosphere, may not be the worst way to go, and he suddenly finds himself in a dark room with gruesome statues in it. He endures a test of unimaginable pain, and a voice tells him that he's been chosen as champion, and he finds a sword. As for Athena, it turns out the creature that grabbed her is a gigantic spider. The spider paralyzes her and wraps her in webbing. And who else does she find but Charlie, who tells her the spider that captured her was the one he refers to as Daddy, and he's not nearly as big as Mommy. Turns out that Athena and Charlie are going to be the first meal of Mommy and Daddy's babies. As Athena watches, the babies begin to come out of their egg sac. Almost in the nick of time, Athena is rescued by Hal, who is now a superhero of some sort. I say almost because Hal is able to save Athena, but is too late to rescue Charlie. When they emerge from the forest, it turns out they've been caught by Peter's grandfather, who's very upset that they went into the forest. He eventually explains to them that what Athena did isn't technically magic, but is a way of generating energy by manipulating the difference between the perfect world we should have and the imperfect world we ended up with. He considers using his ability to manipulate the dissonance to remove their abilities, but instead chooses to take them on as students. We return to 2019 when the characters are all descending upon Clegg, Texas. Hal and Athena have arrived. Hal visits old apartment complex, and Athena visits the professor's house. Aaron and Philip arrive in town and go to the cemetery, where we visit Peter's grave, and find the professor has passed as well. So that answers the question about where Peter went in the earlier part of the 2019 timeline. While at the cemetery, a hailstorm shows up with really huge hail that bruises Aaron up pretty badly. Owen and the Cole thing are still on the road. At this point, Owen is probably questioning all of his life decisions that led him up to this point, as the Cole thing first kills an employee of a convenience store and then barfs up all of Cole's internal organs. Next, we skip ahead from the perspective of the 1996 storyline and go back from the perspective of the 2019 storyline to 1997, where Marcia's brought the Coven to a convention of dissonance. Mostly we set up the world and the relationships among the characters. We also meet Garrett, the dealer in the dissonant text that Athena is talking to at the beginning of the book. The convention is largely panels, including one where we find that at least 50% of dissonants believe that dissonance is an Abrahamic religion, based on God speaking the world into existence in Genesis, in the book of John, beginning with, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." These dissonants believe that the word in question was not Jesus, but was in fact dissonance. Wow, that felt a little sacrilegious to even type. But I digress. Marsh believes in something called the many worlds theory, which is more or less parallel timelines, and also other planets. The religious dissonants believe this is sacrilege because the Bible talks about like our world is the only one. And if there were more than one world, the Bible would mention it. Now, I went to a religious high school, and that was pretty much the argument against there being life on other planets, because there was life on other planets would mention the Bible. I'm like, I was raised Christian. I am a Christian. I was not raised with that sort of mindset / worldview. I was raised with the mindset / worldview that the Bible is our perspective, is the human perspective on our relationship with something immortal, infinite, ineffable, you know. We're trying to understand the infinite, and this is our attempt to understand God and Jesus, and all that still applies but it's, maybe other planets have their own Bibles. Maybe other planets got it right the first time and didn't end up needing Jesus. Who knows? Anyway, so the coven also participates in what's known as flyting, Flyting, which is traditionally a battle of words, but since words are how the dissonance works, they've adopted that term for their form of dueling. Erin, who's decided she needs some normalcy in her life, has gone out for cheerleading, and now she has a boyfriend, which has caused a rift in their coven. Meanwhile, Marsh wants to show off Hal's sword and does a panel on the Temple of Pain, which is where Hal got the sword, in which Marsh admits that Hal is not dissonant at all. Peter gets his butt handed to him on the fighting matches. Erin does surprisingly well. Athena also does very well, and Hal isn't allowed to participate because he isn't dissonant. He tastes alcohol for the first time on this weekend, and well, since we meet him for the first time outside an AA meeting, we know where that's going. Erin defeats Athena in the fighting matches, meaning that Erin is the champion of the girls' side, and she will be facing off against Garrett, the champion of the boys' side, in the final. Athena's angry because dissonance is supposed to be her thing. Erin already has what looks to the outside to be normalcy. The night before the final match, all four of them are various flavors of hurt, disappointed, and angry. When Hal, Athena, and Peter are outside licking their wounds, Hal points out that Erin would be happy for any one of them if they'd done as well as she has, encourages them to support her. The next day, Erin goes up against Garrett and beats him by using his own spell against him. The other four, including Marsh, have made a banner in support of her, and the coven makes up. Back in 2019, Hal and Athena are still experiencing storms and red skies and earthquakes that none of the non-dissonants seem to notice. The three remaining members of the coven meet for dinner, where both Hal and Athena feel bad they didn't think to visit Peter's grave. Owen and the Coal Thing stop at an abandoned motel for the night, and the Coal Thing tells Owen that he, the Coal Thing, has arrived to save the world. Next, we go back to 1998. Professor Marsh has decided to train the coven in different skills. Hal and Erin are training in combat, Peter's designing dissonant plants, and Athena has been given the task of designing a new command line. Now, I'm old enough that a command line is in DOS. If you've ever seen, some of you may be old enough to have used DOS, but the command line is the C:// thing that you type when you start like an app or whatever. So I was very confused by that term, but it is what it is. I need a counter in the corner if I ever did. This kind of bothers me because command line is the kind of blinky cursor line in DOS computer systems. But I digress. Meanwhile, Erin and Peter have finally gotten together romantically. Neither's ready for sex yet, but they date and make out and such. This will actually be important later. Erin is also tasked with teaching Hal to read Dissonance so they can read a book on the Temple of Pain together. He can sort of make sense out of it when Erin helps him, but once he stops working with her, the information drains out of his head. Erin and Hal's home lives are falling apart as well. Erin's mom leaves her dad for the fire chief, and Hal's mom takes up with the new guy, Reggie, who just sits around drinking beer and smoking cigarettes. To make matters worse, Hal's mom, who has trouble holding down a job, loses her latest job as an overnight DJ at the local country station. Peter is not getting anywhere with his plants until Hal touches the dead thing that was supposed to have been a glow-in-the-dark potato. When Hal touches it, it comes back to life and sprouts roots. I'm sorry, I'm from Chicago. It's a root. It's not a root. Peter plants it and it continues to grow. The book on the Temple of Pain really disturbs Erin, and she's worried about sharing the information with Hal. I think this is the section when Hal goes back to the Temple of Pain and is told he's in perfect position to achieve some goal that the temple has in mind. Or maybe that was in the 1997 part. Athena's command line is a gateway, which she ends up developing. She and Erin use it to sneak into the movies and things like that, but they find a real use for it once Hal meets an undine, which is like a water spirit, named Morgan. It's sort of a mermaid creature. He stumbles into her prison somehow, and she tells him that an evil wizard is holding her captive. Once Hal realizes that what Athena's command line is, he also realizes they could use it to rescue Morgan. They use Hal's memory of her prison cell, which is more like a pond or a lake in a cave, to direct Athena, and they find her. Everything sort of goes downhill from there. The prison starts to shake and the back walls fall apart, showing a hallway like in an office building, a building which seems to be on fire. Peter uses Dissonance to pick up the water from Morgan's pool and douse the flames, ending up semi-conscious and with a terrible nosebleed. Athena ends with a massive headache, and then she gets attacked by a tree when they return home. Hell defeats the tree and frees Athena. The five of them, including Morgan, then go to a local lake where they set Morgan free, and she offers them a boon in return for their service. After Peter and Athena return home, Aaron and Hal see a light in the sky that isn't normal. It turns out that Hal's apartment building is on fire, and Hal's mom and her boyfriend were killed in the fire. Now we're back in 2019 for the moment. Owen and the coal thing are arriving in Clegg, and the coal thing realizes that Owen can see the redness in the sky. Meanwhile, Hal, Athena, Aaron, and Philip are getting ready for the memorial service. Aaron and Philip come down to meet the others in the lobby of their hotel, and Athena is appalled by what she sees. You see, Philip is the embodiment of a tulpa. Tulpa? I think it's tulpa, which is based perhaps a bit too loosely in Buddhism. In Western thought, a tulpa is a being that begins sort of as an imaginary friend, and the being will eventually develop its own thoughts independent of the tulpamancer. Only instead of residing entirely in Aaron's head, Aaron had bits of her own flesh used to create a physical form for her tulpa. Tulpas have no soul, and thus they are generally destroyed. But since Aaron used her own body to create Philip, destroying Philip would kill her. The memorial service for whatever happened in 1999 that led to Peter's death begins. Athena meets a sheriff's deputy who was a few years older than her in school and offers to sit with her. Hal, Aaron, and Philip all sit together. Owen and the coal thing arrive at the memorial service, and the coal thing makes booming sounds from the ceiling. For some reason known only to Owen and to Hamill, Owen yells the coal thing has a gun, which causes a panic and leads to everyone fleeing the church. And some are trampled in the process. Maybe Owen thought it'd save lives from whatever the coal thing had planned. I don't know. Hal, Aaron, Athena, and Philip are asleep. And the deputy tries in the church, and the deputy tries to defend the sleeping Athena, but the coal thing pushes him over with the dissonance. The coal thing grabs Athena and directs Owen to grab Philip, and together they leave the church, leaving Hal and Aaron behind. Now, 1999. This is one of the biggest sections of the book, the field trip they take using Athena's doorway. Professor March has a book about a place called Diaz that is a tremendous source of dissonant energy. The Coven pretend they're going camping in Oklahoma, really they're going to Diaz. And also, Hal's alcoholism is in full swing now. They use the doorway to get to Diaz, but they end up a 3-day hike from the source of the energy. They camp the first day. Diaz, it turns out, is a desert planet, so it's too hot to hike in the daytime. Aaron and Peter consummate their relationship, and Aaron absolutely panics. She and Peter were staying at Aaron's tent while Athena bunked with Hal, and she kicks Peter out. The second night, they find an empty village with a large black building in the center. No good comes of finding large black buildings, but we're going to find out. Hal and Aaron decide to explore the building, which looks like a church of some kind. They walk into the church, and there's a large sculpture of a ship surrounded by monsters. The entire inside of the church is black, and as they're looking at the sculpture, the church starts to get darker. They realize that the doors are closing, only instead of closing vertically, like how they opened, they're closing horizontally, like Jaws. The floor gets sticky and starts to suck them in. At this point, they decide to have sex right there. They're groping each other just as the church spits them out into the sand outside. It turns out that Athena saw them sneaking off, and rescues them. The next day, they find the source of the dissonant energy, a ship in the middle of the desert. Then, in the hold of the ship, they find a statue. The statue is holding its head like it's in pain, but I've always pictured Melker from the classic Doctor Who episode Keeper of Traken. Don't ask me how my brain works. I get a lot of, as we go through this, you'll discover there's a lot of old classic Doctor Who references in my brain. A lot of characters and things. Nynaeve from, a lot of the characters from like The Wheel of Time are played by people who were on Doctor Who episodes. I don't know. So Marsh tries some kind of dissonant thing on the statue, and the statue attacks them. They beat a hasty retreat after that and go back to Marsh House, where no one is happy with anyone else. Back in 2019. Now, this is where the spoilers start. Up till now, this is pretty basic. We're going to get into the exciting part, which is like the last 4 pages of the script. So I guess if you want to get off here, this is the place to stop. I will see you guys later. If you know any books, you can look through my channel and see what kind of things I like. So I need to figure out what date this is launching, because I picked out something for Christmas, and I need to make sure I schedule it the right, or otherwise I'm gonna like schedule it on the wrong day. Or maybe I should film it next and schedule it. Anyway, So I'll see you in the next one, and we'll, like I said, as you discover what kind of things I like, feel free to make suggestions. I've got a lot of books that I've already read in my life, and I've got a lot of books that I want to read. And I've got a TBR pile. I'm looking at my TBR pile. My TBR pile's a disaster, so it's going to be kind of an adventure. So anyway, onward. And for those of you who are still here, who've put up with that rambling, onward to the spoilers. First, the coal thing. The coal thing has Owen and drive Athena and Philip to Professor Marsh's house. You see, the coal thing is Professor Marsh. He explains to Athena what he wants to do. He wants to put his soul into Philip's body. When Marsh died, he went to hell. His hell was a massive, massive bureaucracy, and he found a way to escape. He killed Cole and took over his body, but Cole's body is rotting, and Marsh needs a new body. And the universe is trying to kill Philip because his existence has thrown everything out of balance because he doesn't have a soul. So by Marsh's logic, putting a soul into Philip's body should save the world. Meanwhile, Aaron and Hal decide that they want to save the day, and they need help from Hal's old friend Morgan. Only Morgan doesn't respond. Her daughter, Sybil, does. Owen and Philip go take showers, and Philip collapses through the shower door. They haul him into Peter's old bedroom, where he regains consciousness, and he and Owen end up cuddled together on Peter's old bed. Back in 1999, we finally find out what happened the day of the disaster. When the kids come back from Dioth, Hal de facto moves out of Professor Marsh's house. He takes up drinking even more and starts to sleep in his car. Erin invites him to stay with her and her father, and he takes her up on it. The day everything goes to heck, Peter seems to be not entirely surprised when the school starts to tremble. He sends Erin and Hal to protect the students in the library, and has Athena persuade everyone to go hide up there. Then he heads outside to face whatever it is. Whatever it is turns out to be the statue from Dioth. He casts a command of some sort that slows the statue down, but won't stop it from whatever it's doing. Realizing that if what Peter is doing can't stop the statue, she can't stop it either, Athena flees. The 4 members of the Coven are the only survivors of the high school. Pretty crappy protection, if you ask me. They have to enlarge the cemetery in order to make room for all the dead from the high school. Actually, I take it back. The 3 members of the Coven. I forgot about that. I made a mistake in my script. Right. But anyhow, they have to enlarge the cemetery in order to make room for all the dead from the high school. Now, I get to channel my inner Kronk because it's all coming together. At this point, we find out everything that's going on, so feel free to stop now if you don't want to be spoiled. Go back to 2019. Marsh, Athena, Owen, and Philip. As we know, Marsh is planning to put his soul into Philip's body because Philip is an abomination. Marsh lets Athena in on a little secret. He has a shed in his backyard that leads to a whole underground complex where he's holding various specimens for study. Morgan, the Undine, was at one time one of these specimens. Athena's horrified, but when Marsh offers to bribe Athena into helping him with little vials of dissonance that she can inject into herself, she, like any addict, lets her... Oh, I missed that part. He cuts them all off from the dissonance. Like he planned to do it, like he thought he might do at the beginning. Anyway, lets her distaste fade. Athena has doubts about this because even though Marsh swears this is the only way to save the world, Philip sure looks like a whole person to her. The plan is to travel to Dioth to use the statue as the power source for the ritual. So, after Athena and Marsh pack Cole's decaying body into a dissonant sarcophagus, and the 3 ambulatory members of the group take the ATV through Athena's doorway to Dioth. At one point they get attacked and Philip loses part of one of his legs. They know Marsh won't like that, but it is what it is. I need a counter. And they go onwards towards the ship. Athena also loses most of the use of one arm in the battle as well. As they travel, Philip reveals that he has misgivings about this plan. Originally all he wanted was to save the world and protect Aaron, but now he wants to continue to live. He doesn't want to just be a host for Marsh's soul. The last night before the ritual, intimacy takes place between Philip and Owen. Meanwhile, Aaron and Hal meet with Sybil, who tells them that they don't have their boon yet. Hal had always assumed that the death of his mom and boyfriend was the boon, but it turns out it's just a tragedy. Though I do have a question about this, which maybe if there's ever going to be a sequel, maybe we'll answer this, or maybe it's just a coincidence. I do find it interesting that the day they rescue Morgan, which was the same day as the fire in that complex underground, there's also a fire at Morgan at Hal's apartment. So were Hal's mom and the boyfriend somehow involved with Marsh? Was their apartment building somehow connected to that underground complex? And that's why the building caught fire? We never. Anyway, the Eddie rest. The fire wasn't Hal's boon, and none of the others have had their boon yet either. So Sybil offers them their boon. The next day on Dioth, Athena tries to perform the ritual, but the little squid-looking thing that is Marsh's soul cannot get into Philip's body because Philip has developed the soul. Owen says that it was the act of intimacy that gave Philip the soul, but Philip was not what you call a virgin. He'd been riding the hobby horse with Aaron on a regular basis. I think Philip was growing a soul the whole time, as evidenced by his fear of becoming a host for Marsh, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, once Philip can no longer host Marsh, Marsh takes the next best soulless thing on offer, the Dioth statue. Sybil's boon is to move the coven back to 1999 to stop Marsh in the body of the statue. We see the day of Peter's death from Peter's perspective and see that he knew it was all going to go to hell, in part because he was the one who rescued Sybil from Marsh's warehouse of captives. After doing her accidental part in putting Marsh's soul in the statue, she also gets pulled back to 1999. After another trip to the Temple of Pain, where Hal discovers the grand purpose for which he was chosen was to help Marsh, he rejects them. The coven works together to remove Marsh's soul from the statue and cast it through Athena's doorway into Tehom, the deeps between the worlds, from whence it will hopefully never return. The statue returns to Dioth. They have to leave Peter to die again because he sacrificed the only thing that kept the whole town from being destroyed, and the coven finds themselves no longer severed from the Dissonance. We end with an epilogue setting up a potential sequel. Hal finds out he's Sybil's father, surrenders himself to prison knowing he's got a daughter to return to. Athena rebuffs Hal's declaration of love and begins romance with Jordan, only to find that Jordan is one of the non-dissonants who helped Marsh. In fact, Jordan now owns Marsh's house where they've been squatting, and Erin gets a communication from the governing body of Dissonance telling her they're bringing charges against her for Philip's existence. Will we get a sequel? I hope we do. I want to see the coven prove that Philip's a whole person now. So it's a really good book. You know I probably went into too much detail, but there's just so much, and I'm going to throw this over here. And there's just so much detail, and come on. How could I condense that down to shorter than 27 minutes? Come on. There's a lot of details, a lot of character development, a lot of exciting parts, and I could not find this book when I was going to take a picture of it for the title thumbnail, and I go to Alex, and Alex was on the computer, and I'm like, I am looking for a yellow-green book, and I'm like, yellow-green book, and I found it, and then the next book I'm going to talk about, Scout's Honor, I couldn't find that one. That one took me a long time, and I had to send a picture, and I eventually did find it. That's the problem with having had 3 months between filming. I wrote the scripts, then I lost the books. But I found them. It's really good. My copy is a first printing, and it's also signed by the author. So someday it may be worth some money as well. I mostly just hope that I'll have grandkids who are bookworms, because Alex totally is not. But I'm hoping I'll have grandchildren who are bookworms, and they'll be like, wow, Grandma, or Mimi, or whatever I'm going to be called, Olivia, whoever. I thank you for having all these books so that I can read and read and read and read. I hope. Anyway, this has been my review, my recommendation of The Dissonance by Shaun Hamill. I will see you again in the next one, and you know the drill. If you have any books that you'd like me to read that you think I would enjoy and be able to recommend, feel free to put them in the comments. I'm not so much with the spicy. There might be a couple spicy ones coming up, but I'm not so much with the spicy. I was a little bit more when I was younger, but now I'm like, life's too short. So anyway, I will see you in the next one, which I'm going to film in probably about 2 minutes. Thank you. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.